Picture this. You're stepping into the damp, shadowy woods of northern Italy, and the year is 1659. What you're about to witness isn't a witch hunt or a secret ritual. It's a profound, almost unbelievable mystery. A moment where the rigid, unbending machinery of human law collides head-on with the chaotic, microscopic reality of nature. This is the 1659 trial of the Italian caterpillars. It's a case that absolutely tests the very limits of human authority over the wild.
On June 26, 1659, a formal legal summons was carried deep into these forests, but it wasn't served to a person. Instead, it was nailed directly to the bark of the trees. We're talking about creeping larvae accused of trespassing and pilfering from local gardens, being actively served legal papers. They were literally expected to understand, to comply, and to answer to the law of man. It sounds like madness, doesn't it?
A glitch of scale. The majesty of the law. Now, you might be thinking this was just some local joke, a comedic footnote in history, but it wasn't. This was a vast, highly coordinated legal operation. The universal net of 17th century law was trying to capture the infinitely small. 5 separate communes, Gordona, Misi, Samolico, Prada, and Chiavenna, all initiated these proceedings under the strict direction of Captain J.B. Pestalozzi. Copies of this summons were posted in all 5 forests just to make absolutely sure the defendants had no excuse for a non-appearance. In their minds, the law was this absolute inescapable net. It caught the high, the low, and, well, everything in between. If a pig could be tried for a crime back then, why not excommunicate a caterpillar for theft?
Summons in the forest, waiting on the silent defendants.
Advocate for the silent, the biological defense. So on June 28th, the specified hour for the trial finally arrives. Commissioner Hartman Planta is presiding. The citizens are gathered, and the court just waits. They solemnly wait for the defendants to literally crawl up to the bench. And of course, the judgment hall remained completely empty. Still, a rigid legal system absolutely demands a response. So they assign a public defender, a man named Cesar de Peverello, to represent the absent insects.
Peverello executes a brilliant legal maneuver. He doesn't deny they were eating the crops. Instead, he argues they were simply executing God's given biological code. He points out that at the very moment of creation, the Creator granted the creeping things every green herb for meat. The caterpillars were innocent, instinctual machines, just running the innate software of nature. They weren't stealing maliciously, they were exercising an innate right to life.
An incredible philosophical clash unfolds right there in the courtroom. On one side, the prosecution led by Captain Pestalozzi represents this desperate, highly punitive worldview. To them, these insects were a literal plague, sent to punish the sins of the people. But on the other side, defense attorney Peverello is fighting with a surprisingly modern, rights-based argument. He's standing there insisting that these are innocent agents with a divine right to exist and find sustenance.
The monitorium and the anathema. The secular sacrilege.
The legal tension here tightens into a profound theological trap. Think about it. If the caterpillars really were agents of God exercising a divine right, then battling them with secular force would be an act of absolute sacrilege. But the community was completely desperate. Physical eradication by hand was impossible against a swarm of that scale. So they reached for ecclesiastical warnings. The first step was the monitorium. This was a formal ecclesiastical warning that preceded the final strike of excommunication. Essentially, it was a spiritual shot across the bow of the insect horde.
And if the monitorium failed? Well, they demanded the anathema, a formal ecclesiastical curse. With their entire livelihood being actively consumed, the citizens fully believed this grim, formal curse was a weapon far more effective than any physical pesticide. They demanded that the judge unleash the church's ultimate weapon to formally banish the creatures from cultivated human land entirely.
Verdict of the Grand Face, legislating the wild.
The court eventually reached this incredibly bizarre territorial compromise. They acknowledged that, yes, the caterpillars had an innate right to happiness and life, but they also had to protect human survival. So they established the Grand Face. These were uncultivated tracts of land designated specifically as an insect reservation for the defendants' enjoyment. It was this entirely feudal, legislative boundary line drawn straight between the cultivated world of men and the uncultivated asylum of the wild. They were literally trying to tell nature exactly where it was allowed to be wild.
The disappearing defendants. A corrected glitch.
But the agonizingly slow churn of human bureaucracy proved to be absolutely no match for rapid biology. Look at the timeline here. On June 26th, summons were nailed to the trees. 2 days later, the defendants failed to appear. Then, for months, these meticulous legal debates over the Grand Face land transfer just dragged on and on. But while the humans were trapped arguing over property rights and boundaries, the biological clock relentlessly ticked. By the time the final decree was drafted and ready to be enforced, the caterpillars had naturally completed their life cycle.
The glitch simply corrected itself. The creeping larvae transformed into winged spirits. The biological timeline permanently outpaced the legal one, and the defendants literally flew right out of the court's jurisdiction. In the end, everyone was reportedly satisfied. The humans stopped losing their crops because the feeding stage was over, and the insects successfully bypassed the legal system by simply growing up and flying away.
But this story has one final, haunting mystery. When historians look at the physical archives today, they're left with an incomplete protocol written in execrable Latin. The final page of the verdict, the ultimate judgment of humanity over the insects, physically vanishes into history. It cuts off right at the crucial moment.
Leaving us with a rather cruel irony. Nature usually has the last word, even if it has to eat the paper that word is written on. The very creatures being prosecuted, or perhaps their rodent cousins in the archives, physically consumed the human law that sought to bind them. The ink and the paper simply became another green herb for meat. The law itself was literally digested by the wild.
So it leaves us asking, must even the smallest parts of the world answer to our laws? This 1659 trial exposes humanity's desperate, almost primal need to impose order onto an indifferent, chaotic universe. We try so hard to bind the wild with our rituals and our punishments, but sometimes the universe simply sprouts wings and flies away. Can we ever truly legislate the forces of nature, or are we just shouting into the forest?